Good morning, Tri-Cities. I'm Karl Dye from TRIDEC, and it's time for Coffee with Karl. Today is the next iteration, the next series, the next webinar of our 22nd annual economic outlook. And today our topic is life in the Tri, or life in the Tri-Cities. So we've got a great panel, and I'll go one by one and introduce each of them in no particular order. We'll start with Megan Hughes. She is the assistant winemaker and enologist from Barnard Griffin Winery. Good morning, Megan. Oh, you're still on mute. Sorry. It's the old Zoom.
I can't believe I did that. Good morning, Karl.
Okay. We've all done it. It happens in the Zoom world that we live in. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Next
is Krista Patterson. She's the co-owner of Northwest Paddleboarding. Good morning, Krista.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, or being virtually here. Buck Taft is our Tri-Cities Airport Director. Good morning, Buck.
Morning, Karl.
And last but very not least is our own, I'll say, Michael Novakovich, the President and CEO of Visit Tri-Cities. Good morning, Michael.
Howdy, Karl. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I like your background. That's cool.
Thank you. Sunshiny day in the one of your 400 days. One of our 400.
Exactly.
Funny.
Oh, this is awesome. I have today, so we're going to start off with our what are we drinking, or a mug or coffee story. And I have this cool hydro flask with the Love the Tri sticker. I figured that was appropriate for our conversation today. I also have, for my coffee and on Coffee with Karl, we're pretty open about saying, hey, anybody that gives us a mug, we'll be happy to talk about your company or whatever that you're representing. This one's from STCU. They dropped it off. They took us up on the plug. A couple of weeks ago, as I was drinking some coffee out of a Pasco Airport, Tri-Cities Airport mug from Buck. So just saying, if anybody wants to, get a free plug on the program, we are always open for new mugs. So let's go to Krista. Why don't you start us off with your mug or coffee story, or what do you got?
Yeah, I've got some novel coffee. So they're a newer coffee shop, not super new, but kind of new. And they are in the same building as us. So we're down in Howard Amon Park, and they're just up the staircase behind me. And they have a really cool, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's,
oh, cool.
I don't know how they do it. They got this machine that does this cool thing, and you get to be like a kid again, sticking your like Capri Sun straw in the top, and it's really good. So novel.
That's awesome. Megan, let's go to you next. What do you have a coffee or mug story for us?
Yeah, so I am drinking herbal tea, and my mug is from Central Industrial Sales, which is a wine wholesale shop here in town. Then I also have my water that I get to drink out of a wine glass. So
nice. Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of water, let's go to Buck next. Buck, what do you got for us, buddy?
I've got my trusty old half-gallon water jug that's all beat up and dropped. I take it to the gym. Everywhere I go, this jug's with me, and it's not even level. It just waddles on my desk. It's been dropped so many times.
I found with our kids' water bottles, if you hit them in the bottom with a ball peen hammer a couple times, you can kind of flatten them out. So if you want me to hook you up, I'm ready for it, man.
I had to buy this. This is a metal one. I had a plastic one, and I dropped it, and it just made a hairline crack, and I put it on my desk, and I went around and did stuff, came back, and my desk was covered with water. So
Oh, no.
I had to transition to the metal.
Got to go to the metal.
Yeah.
That's a good call. Michael, how about you? Do you have a story for us, or?
Whoops, is it coming in? Where can we?
It's kind of green screen.
There we go.
Oh,
Harley Dude. I don't remember who gave this to me years ago. I got a pretty solid collection of Harley mugs going on. I've been riding scoots for 20 plus years. So it's a nice, heavy, keeps it warm kind of mug.
that's perfect. Well, Michael, you are our first presenter from Visit Tri-Cities. So we're gonna give you somewhere around 7 minutes if you want to. I think you got a couple slides to share with us to kick us off.
Yeah, maybe if I get Tracy to fire up my deck. I noticed when I went to do a screen share, it was wanting to show everything instead of just my deck. So maybe Tracy, if I could just let you know when we want to advance, if we could.
That's awesome. While she's working on that, I'll let everybody know if you do have any questions, we'll use the question and answer feature at the bottom. We'll do our best to get to those questions. If you're on social media, you can always ask us a question in the comment section. And then again, we'll work that in. We're going to give everybody around 7 minutes and then to talk about their specific area. Then we'll get into those questions at the second half of the hour. So know if Tracy's able to pull that up, or Michael.
Hmm.
There we go.
We on? Excellent. Well, while Tracy's teeing it up, I'll let you know that we are Visit Tri-Cities, the marketing arm of the Tri-Cities area. So strap in, buckle up. We're going to hit the gas, take you on a little 7-minute tourism tour. If you are not familiar, tourism in Washington State is the 4th largest industry. So pre-COVID numbers for you, it employs about 183,000 people and drove 21.4 billion with a B dollars in economic impact. So big business. Big business here in the Tri-Cities as well. Again, some pre-COVID numbers for you. $500 million in visitor spending annually. So $500 million walks into our community in the pockets of tourists as they spend money staying in our hotels, going out enjoying our restaurants, purchasing from our retail, pumping gas, buying groceries, and of course, drinking a lot of wine. So all of these dollars help small businesses not only survive, but thrive. And with a thriving business climate, we can attract new business, which is great news for you and I, because we have more amenities to enjoy here in the Tri-Cities. All that visitor activity employs about 5,600 people here in our community, so a pretty significant employer. And that visitor activity generates a significant amount of tax revenue, about $55 million annually in state and local taxes. More great news for you and I. Those visitors are paying the way. You and I pay less in taxes. And here's what those taxes are helping to fund. Emergency services like police and fire, schools, teachers, the maintenance of our roads, the beautifications of our parks, and so much more. So when you look at this in total, that visitor economy is helping to fund a safe community, an educated community, an employed community, and a beautiful community filled with many amenities for all of us to enjoy. So it really touches everybody in our community. Well, as you probably know, and you can see that slide there, COVID-19, oh my gosh, it hit the tourism, the hospitality industry very hard. As you might imagine, things came to a grinding halt last March with the stay-at-home order. Last year, on average, across our industry, there was a 45% downturn, so significant economic loss. So one of the things that we did at Visit Tri-Cities was we turned our attention right away to mitigation and recovery endeavors. So one of the things that we did in partnership with TRIDEC, the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the Benton Franklin Health District was stand up Tri-Cities Open and Safe, getting our businesses back opened in a safe and efficient manner. We developed the Tri-Cities and Open and Safe Business Pledge that was a trigger the governor's office used to allow us to move into a modified phase 1, if you remember that. Seems like a million years ago, that modified phase 1. But to continue that work, we serve on the Municipality Advisory Council along with Karl and TRIDEC, the Chamber, Benton Franklin Health District, and all the cities within Benton and Franklin counties. So we have the city managers and the mayors. We have an administrator from each one of the counties and a county commissioner last year working directly with the governor's office and the Department of Health, advancing us through the phases, but getting additional accommodations within the phases, bringing back our business in a safe fashion. We continue to meet and advocate in that regard. And then in an industry-specific way, one of the coalitions that I serve on representing Visit Tri-Cities is the Washington State Safe Meetings and Events Coalition. So we've been working with the governor's office last year and this year, and directly with the Department of Health, Labor and Industries, and the Policy Office to bring back industry-specific business. A lot more work to do. Tracy, if you could advance me one slide. Meetings and conventions is part of what we call group business. And you can see some of the concerns there or what they might be in terms of barriers to bringing back this business. So when we look at this, we were expecting that second quarter of this year, we'd start to see this business come back around. Some of it might be hybrid events, but we're already starting to see some cancellations into the third quarter as we're sitting in this unknown spot of what phase 3 will look like. We also have some barriers with occupancy limits. So there's a number of things that we're doing to work with the governor's office on this to bring this back safely. Everything we're doing as it relates to tourism, we're doing in a safe manner. Group business also includes sports. So if you don't mind advancing me there, Tracy, sports development, this is the shining star in terms of group business. When we went out to our tournament directors and athletes last year, they were ready to take the fields and believed that they could safely do so. And while I can tell you, we're excited. Sports starts this weekend in the Tri-Cities. So it's returned. It looks different. Of course, safety is paramount. The way we're managing teams on the fields, we're managing spectators. All of this has got a different look and feel, but it's great for the mental health of these young athletes. We have more events coming this spring and into this summer. So very, very excited. There are some challenges, the unknowns of phase 3, although we believe that's going to open some opportunities up for us further, which is very exciting. But officials, there's a lack of officials. So if any of you have been dying to wear the black and white stripes, contact Hector Cruz, the VP at Visit Tri-Cities. He'll get you connected. Well, finally, this is the star of the tourism profile. And Tracy, if you don't mind kicking me forward, there we go. Leisure travel. It's the return of the road trip. There is pent up demand. If you're like me, I want to get out and explore and enjoy some tourism. Well, it's happening. 2 out of 3 people are willing to travel up to 300 miles one way to have an experience. So this puts us in the swing zone of Seattle, Portland, Spokane, and Boise. They're looking for wide open spaces and magical places. We've got them here in the Tri-Cities, which is exceptional. They're looking for recreational opportunities. We're going to hear from a friend of mine, Krista Patterson, Northwest Paddleboarding. No doubt she has many opportunities for these traveling, intrepid travelers, as well as another friend, Megan Hughes, Barnard Griffin Winery. Those wine experiences provide great opportunities. And finally, last slide there, level of engagement. Of course, we're going to continue to do things like broadcast media, digital placement, streaming, social media promotion, but we're also doing virtual tours. So we have a new platform. It's a VR experience, bird's eye views of the Tri-Cities. You come down to street level, check out through a virtual experience the amenities and attractions that make the Tri-Cities so cool. We also have a similar platform for meeting planners and the tournament directors where they can virtually tour our sports infrastructure, meeting spaces, and hotels to make those decisions without coming in for a site visit. But we're excited. We hadn't seen site visits in a year. We have one going on right now during this presentation, one tomorrow. So we're seeing activity with group business. No doubt we'll be using more and more QR codes and less paper, at least in our business, and apps. We have a virtual platform called Bandwango that's a city pass. We're retooling our wine pass right now, but we're going to have other adventures that kick off this spring and into summer for our visitors to engage in, driving that economic impact and a cool opportunity for our residents as well. And then if you take it to the very end, that's what I had for you. Thanks for the 7-minute tour, joining me for it. As we talked about tourism. Karl, back to you, sir.
Oh, that's awesome, Michael. Thank you. On the virtual tours, are those up and running now, or they're coming? And can like somebody just that is from Tri-Cities like us that wants to explore a few things, can we check it out?
Absolutely. So that platform will be launching, if I had to guess, and my team, if they're listening, is probably going to wrangle me later, but within the next month, we'll have a platform up called SkyNav. We'll have it on our website. We're developing a new website too that's going to be really robust and rich with content, but people here locally will be able to enjoy that here real soon, and we'll make a big announcement about that, but cool technology.
That's really cool. Michael, thanks. That was really good. We'll get back to some questions here in a little bit, but next we'll go to Krista Patterson. Krista, if you're ready to cover your portion, thank you for turning your camera back on and unmuting. So Krista, let's just have a conversation about Northwest Paddleboarding. Tell me a little bit about it. Like, what's your elevator pitch, if you will?
Yeah, so sorry, I feel like my face has gotten darker since earlier, but anyway, we are a paddleboard company and we do everything paddleboarding that you could think of, really. So we've got rentals, we do tours, lessons, classes like paddleboard yoga, we do moonlight paddles, we go, from Blue Bridge to the Cable Bridge for the moonlight paddle at night, and we get to go around Clover Island. We kind of do it all. We have sails. We also have kayaks, but just the inflatable kind. And we're all about just getting people outdoors. That's our mission. And so in any way that we can do that, that's our goal. So that's kind of who we are. And we started 6 years ago. So we're going into our 7th season now. We started with a handful of paddleboards in a trailer, and now we have hundreds of paddleboards and a storefront. So we've grown a lot over the last few years.
That's awesome. So the history of paddleboarding, you guys have been in business for 6 years. Is that kind of about when it started, or how did paddleboarding come about? Like, where did it come from?
Yeah, so it came from Hawaii, where people were surfing, and then they started paddle surfing, and then from paddle surfing it turned into paddle boarding. So paddle surfing, basically you're just surfing but with a paddle to help navigate and steer, and then paddle boarding, of course, is something you can do on a ton more waterways. So with surfing, of course, you need the wake, that wave, in order to move, but with paddle boarding you can do it on lakes and rivers and anywhere. So it definitely made it a lot more versatile, or the ability to do it just about anywhere. And so then it grew significantly, and it was very new to our area when we started it here, but it was pretty big elsewhere, just again more along like coastlines and things like that. And about the time we started our business is when it had started to really expand into the inland areas.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, realizing we're in COVID, and so last year was not representative by any means, but before that, were you seeing like a nice increase in your business? You said you started off with the van and some paddle boards, but now you have like hundreds. Has it just been like really good growth and more awareness and people really getting into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Every year we've doubled or tripled, mostly doubled. So that's kind of where we're looking. But honestly, 2020 didn't kill us. We still had a huge increase last year. Granted, there were a lot of factors that made it a lot harder to do business. So as business owners, we had a lot of pivoting to do. However, the outdoor industry in general did not really take that big of a hit. We, if anything, went the other direction.
Yeah.
So last year we grew significantly. I tripled my team. So my team tripled from 2019 to 2020, which is incredible, and a lot of stress, of course, hiring that many more people to join your team. But in order to follow the government mandates and all of the, to follow all the rules and stuff like that, we had to have a bigger team in order to get, enough of the washing done. Of course, instead of keeping some equipment at the water and letting it go out over and over again, it has to come all the way back up to our, we've got about 1/4 of a mile between here and the water to be fully, cleaned and sanitized before it goes out again. Of course, our storefront was closed for quite a while, as far as people couldn't come in, but we could have them come outside, and then we would take them down to the water. So it didn't fully shut us down. However, my retail side definitely took a hit at the beginning. And then we were finally able to open our storefront, and that, jumped us quite a bit. But in the beginning, we created an online store. So I think a lot of businesses pivoted that way, not just in the outdoor industry, but a lot of us started selling online. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to do in the future. So it definitely set us up for success in that way, but it was definitely like a hard hit. Okay, pivot now, go. And then, but there was a lot of change, but we've continued to grow every year, and last year was no different.
Oh, that's awesome. And you talked about the online sales and stuff, but I would assume then, like, you carry lines of paddle boards so people can buy paddle boards from you. And then, I mean, like, is it a popular Christmas present? Like, do you have online sales for actual physical boards for Christmas and stuff? Or
okay, so we do, but it's not as big as you'd think. I would hope that it would be, but no, people aren't thinking about it quite as much. We do have a few here and there, so it's definitely not non-existent, but it's not quite as popular. I kind of shut down starting in about October until we're about to open again in April. So over these last few months, it's been pretty dead. We took another pivot this winter, this off season, and started selling sleds to get people outdoors a bit more.
Nice.
So that definitely took off when the snow finally showed up. That really helped us out there. But now again, we're kind of in a lull, and more so preparing for the craziness to come again, because I assume that we're going to have another very busy year. We didn't really take that much of a hit as many industries did. In that sense, our hit was different. So for example, I sold out of paddle boards and I couldn't get any more in. I only have a 900 square foot store, so I can only carry so many paddle boards and kayaks to sell. So after the few that I had were sold, I couldn't get any more in from any of my vendors, because everybody everywhere was doing more outdoor recreation. There's a lot more people getting outside because there's not a whole lot of else to do. And so, yeah, it definitely grew significantly. We just had different challenges than many other businesses.
Yeah. So I've never paddleboarded. If I was interested in coming to Northwest Paddleboarding and how to learn and like what would that look like? What services do you guys offer? And then like what are other things? I know we talked earlier about the yoga on paddleboards, but what are some of the cool things that you guys do?
Yeah, so our lesson is probably one of the most popular. So it's just called Intro to SUP. SUP stands for Stand Up Paddleboarding. It's an hour lesson and we hold it out at Two Rivers Park, kind of East Kennewick. And you can join in on a lesson. We provide the equipment. If you do have your own equipment, you get half off, but we can also provide the equipment if you've never done it before. And you join in on our hour-long lesson and we teach you everything you need to know to get started. And then we have started offering an advanced class as well. So if you kind of get the feel for it and you want to learn more, there's a lot of safety taught in the advanced class. That way people who are going out on their own are very confident in what they're doing. So we teach like a flip rescue and self-rescue, things like that. And then we do have our paddleboard yoga. That's a very calm class. So a lot of people kind of think, oh my gosh, paddleboard yoga, I'm definitely going to fall off. And everybody says that. Everybody's like, oh, I'll be the one to fall off. And every time they're not the one to fall off because we try very hard to keep you on your board. We typically have class at sunset. So the goal is to kind of, zen and be calm and relax. Yeah. So there's a lot of low, close to the board poses for that. And then we do have tours, but COVID, that's one of the things that hurt us is our tours were completely cut off. So hopefully eventually we'll be able to do that again. I'm not seeing it happen in 2021, but hopefully 2022 we'll be back at tours. And that's just because we have to shuttle people in our van, and the close proximity of that is currently not allowed, but also probably not safe. So yeah, all of those tours that we typically do are kind of put to a halt right now, but we do still have our other classes, and we did transition our moonlight paddle. It used to be a tour. We're now doing it, but not as a tour. So we launch from one place and we come back to that place. Okay. That way we can still offer it, but without having to shuttle. Gotcha. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Megan, or excuse me, Krista. That was a really, really good overview of Northwest Paddleboarding. We'll keep on moving with each individual guest, and then we'll come back to some more questions, but thank you for that.
Sounds
that was
good.
Great.
Yep.
We're going to go to Megan next. As we said, the assistant winemaker and enologist from Barnard Griffin Winery. Am I saying enologist right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So Megan, I think you have some slides as well.
Yeah.
So why don't you take it away?
Perfect. Thank you, Karl. So yeah, Megan Hughes, second generation winemaker for Barnard Griffin. So who Barnard Griffin is, my mother, Deborah Barnard, and my father, Rob Griffin, grew up in California, kind of in the wine country down there. And Rob went to UC Davis and got his fermentation science degree down there and just fell in love with wine and all things fermentation. And then they independently both came up to Washington. Rob was offered a head winemaking job up here, and he thought, I'm going to go be a winemaker up in Washington and then come back to California once I've established myself and have a name. And he started making wine in Washington in the 70s and loved what this climate could do with wine and loved how expressive it was and how old world you could make the wines up here. And, 44 years later, he's the longest tenured winemaker in the state. He and my mom have built such a legacy here, such a good foundation. And I'm so honored to be a winemaker here and continue that legacy and keep expanding. So now we're a pretty well-known Washington wine brand, and then have a wine club as well that is really important to us. Let's see. So I'm just going to kind of go through the economic outlook of kind of what we saw in 2020 and then what's to come in 2021. So who is Washington Wine? So everybody has heard of the wine industry and kind of seen this massive growth of it over the last 20 years. So when my dad came to make wine in Washington, there were something like 7 wineries. And now you can see that there's over 1,000. And a lot of those are smaller, producing under 1,000 cases, but we're definitely a well-known national player in the wine market. Just when you think about the Tri-Cities, there's over 200 wineries within 50 miles of where we are right now. So it's such an opportunity for tourism and getting those wineries to have tasting rooms and really take off that way. We have, just a few more things on the other one. We're split about 50-50 on red wine and white wine production. So one thing about Washington that I always say is kind of this, it almost hurts us, is we can do so many things well. So we can make Cab, we can make Chardonnay, we can, do these Italian varieties, the Spanish varieties, basically. Anything we want to make, we can. So there's about 18 million cases of wine made in domestic or in Washington, and about 10 million of that is just in Benton County. So when you think about the Washington wine market, it really is the Tri-Cities that has the bulk of that. The next slide shows our buying trends. So domestic wine sales were going down in the beginning of the year. We had some threats coming in from European tariffs that would have really damaged the wine labor force, if you will. And then you can see kind of everybody's trend. I don't, in March, everyone wanted to stock up their pantries, and then it did level out a bit, but there's still opportunity because it never went down into that negative growth number, which is important. The next slide shows the trends for e-commerce. So kind of what Krista was saying, the opportunity switched so much, and we were all kind of asked to pivot into this e-commerce. And wine has a lot of barriers when you talk about shipping it. You have to cross state lines with alcohol, which is really hard. You have to have the taxes, the licenses, the permitting. All of that matters when you ship a controlled substance. Plus the physical barrier of a wine case is important. They're about 40 pounds, and somebody 21 and older has to sign for it. So I'm still hopeful here because we're still above where we were a few years ago, and there's still a lot of opportunities. So kind of when you have to figure it out, you will, but it's expensive. And in the world of the Amazon model of free fast shipping, it's just not what wine can do. Next, we see, this is from the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board. It shows just trends. I thought this was really interesting. Cannabis is up significantly. I wonder if that's a novelty or if it will continue to rise, or if this is kind of where it will level out. This is all revenue from the State Liquor and Cannabis Board. And then spirits is up. Those were the only two things that was up. I think spirits is up because of hard seltzer. That is the only category of beverages that really took off. And then I was happy, wine, it did have a small decrease, but it doesn't shock me. I think that all of the sales that we as a wine industry lost selling to restaurants, we made up for in selling to grocery. So different level of wine, different premiumization of wine, but overall showing a good trend. The next slide is kind of what we experienced here at Barnard Griffin. So in a world that was so weary and so shaken, harvest and nature gave us an remarkably unremarkable harvest. So the weather kind of did what it does. It was a very normal year. The spring progressed as it should. The rainfall was expected. The sunshine came, and we really didn't see any frost until it was expected, which is late October, which is perfect for wine industry. We did have fires. Fires have continued to be a problem for the last 4 years. We weren't hit as hard as our southern neighbors, but we were blanketed in smoke. Lucky we were all wearing our N95s anyways, because the smoke was really bad out here. That is probably another new normal for us, is to have these massive fire events. But luckily WSU Tri-Cities here in town is leading the charge on a lot of smoke taint research and how smoke affects grapes, but we remained pretty unscathed. Let's see, we have what's next. So Silicon Valley Bank puts out a really comprehensive wine industry report. So we have improved demand from customers. What Michael was saying, as hospitality reopens and the deferred events like weddings, there's going to be a demand for customers. Sales, we're imagining, will bounce back in 2021. And then the e-commerce, it's such a big opportunity. There's growth here still, and just more and more strategies to get wine sales online and reintroduce the wine or any other product into where people are at home. And then as an agriculture product, you have to look at the agriculture things. So we're expecting low growth rates in sales and a balanced supply. So we could bleed back into a off balance oversupply, but we will see. Weather events can change that in seconds. Smoke was a pretty large cause for rejection, both in Washington and California this year domestically. So let's see. The last slide is what is next. So what's next for Barnard Griffin? How do we re-engage our customers? How do we welcome them back? We're so excited that we get to be at 25% capacity and outside. What a good place to live that we really can utilize all this outside space. We're lucky for that. And then, how do we get other people involved? Taste Washington, our wine commission's doing some awesome stuff. My ask for everyone here is to go buy a bottle of Washington wine or a meal from your favorite Washington or local restaurant and just tag Washington State Wine and get involved with the conversation there. It's a lot of fun. Then we get to look at what takeaways are we keeping and what's going to go back to normal. In a world where we pivoted every single direction we went, we were running into walls. And so we get to step back and look and say, hey, what do we like? Well, something Barnard Griffin likes is the more intimate tasting experience, the sit down, get to tell the story to people, get to show them wines one by one, really open up something special for them and kind of guide them through a wine tasting experience, because we can do so many wines here and getting to showcase what Rob loves and now what I love as a winemaker. It has been really fun. Barnard Griffin grew into Vancouver. We opened a tasting room there. They did a lot of waterfront expansion and it's gorgeous. So we have a new tasting room down there. And how do we re-engage and get consumers and guests from here to there and maximize our waterfront here as we get it back and showcasing just what an awesome job they did down there. And then the newest 501c3 for Washington Wine is the Alliance of Women in Washington Wine, which is an awesome group of ladies that have really led the charge in getting this up and running with their lead tagline of Inspire, Connect, and Advance. So that's been fun to see them do that. So all good things.
That's great. Megan, is your location in Vancouver? I think it was like at the Port of Vancouver, right? That was like an old industrial site on the river.
It was, yes.
Is that, yeah.
It was an old train yard and they actually ended up moving the train. But what a good example of this city coming together and taking back the riverfront land and maximizing it for guests. It's incredible and what an example to follow. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Buck, but I'll have some more questions for you when we come back. Thank you. All right. Buck Taft is the director of the Tri-Cities Airport. And Buck, you want to kind of give us an overview and how are things going? Are you, I know, Michael talked about some of those numbers being down. Obviously you guys have seen that too, but you want to kind of give us your overview?
Yeah, sure. Before I get into 2020, 2021, I want to go back to 2019, which was our best year ever. We had 438,000 passengers fly out of the Tri-Cities. So we're really starting to grow and we're having conversations of, hey, do we need to expand this part? Do we need to do this? We're starting to have these difficult conversations. And then January and February came along of 2020, which were normally January and February, or the first quarter is kind of our slow times. And we don't see much growth in the first quarter. And we had large growth in January and February. So then I'm like, oh no, we're going to have a real busy year, and your brain just starts thinking of how are we going to adjust and handle things from a facility standpoint. And then COVID came along, and in April, we were down 95% in passenger traffic. So we basically, in 2019, we had 32,000 people fly out in the month of April. In 2020, we had 1,700. So we went from almost 1,000 people a day leaving down to 60 people a day. So it was almost a standstill. So we had major traffic impacts during that April, May, June timeframe. 2020 last year, we finished at 188,000 total passengers leaving enplanements, which was down 57%. That's our lowest amount of passengers since 1997. So it took us back quite a while. As far as flights go, I went back to December of 19 to kind of when we were really kind of at normal operations, and we had between 16 and 20 flights a day on the standard air carriers, Alaska, Delta, and United, and we had 31 a month on Allegiant, so almost one a day. And in December, we had a load factor of 93%. So the aircraft, every plane was 93% full, which is excellent when we're going and we're trying to recruit airlines. We can say, hey, we're full. We could have more capacity. We could have more seats. So that was good. Going into 2020, we're down to 13 flights on United, 13 flights a day on United, Delta, and Alaska, and down to 21 on Allegiant, which isn't a terrible cutback when you look at it, but our load factor was 56%. So you can see a drastic change in the amount of folks that are flying.
But just real quick, is part of that because some of the airlines chose to keep the middle seats open? Like were they restricting that, or is that just really what the load factor is?
I believe right now, Allegiant was never, they're not doing that. I believe Alaska has closed that loophole. If they haven't, they're really close to, but I believe United's full and Delta's still. I think Delta and Alaska are still protecting some middle seats, but it's closing, but I think that plays into it. But also bookings are down. People just aren't flying right now. Okay. Looking at March of 21, we're up to 14 to 16 flights a day. And those 14 to 16 is sometimes they don't fly on some flights on Saturdays and Tuesdays or Sundays and Tuesdays. The airlines kind of go where the demand is, and that's where we're at 14 to 16. And Allegiant is up to 23. Don't quite have enough load factor data to make, to discuss, is it worth it after, 1 month of numbers, but the flights are coming up. So that's good. In 2020, we did lose, San Francisco was suspended, Chicago was suspended, and we temporarily lost Minneapolis, which I wasn't overly concerned about because I knew it was coming back. That Minneapolis flight, normally it builds up to 2 flights a year, and then it cuts back in the deep winter to 1 because there's just a lack of traveling during that time. So when they cut it, I kind of knew that was them just reducing that flight. And with not a lot of traffic from Pasco to Washington, D.C. or to the East Coast, where a lot of our business travelers fly, it made sense for them to do it temporarily, but it's back now. So that's a good thing for us. We're also, we made the announcement that we're going to gain San Diego as a seasonal service on Allegiant. That'll be May through August, similar to their LA flight. And I believe, they're still showing Chicago and San Francisco as suspended. I do believe we're going to get Chicago back first prior to, or not back, we've never had them, but I believe we'll get Chicago first before we get San Francisco. Part of that reasoning is a lot of our San Francisco traffic was international, and international traffic right now is devastated more so than domestic. And also kind of going from one lockdown state to another lockdown state, the airlines are seeing that as just not a high demand route at this time. So we may have to fight to get San Francisco back at a certain time. Lucky for us, a lot of our international traffic is going to Mexico. And I do see that as being strong and continuing to stay and not going away. So the outlook, I guess, for me, January bookings were double what December bookings were. So the confidence, I believe, is starting to come back. So people are buying, and that doesn't mean people are booking in January. They're booking their flights for future flights. TSA nationwide has seen their best throughput since March. So, TSA is starting to see, and we're going to be nationwide averaging 1 million passengers a day, which we haven't seen in quite a while. So we're starting to trend up. And there is a major correlation between vaccination rate and a higher number of bookings. So people that are getting vaccinated are feeling more confident, and they're there's this pent up need to want to travel. So people that are getting their vaccinations are feeling more comfortable wanting to travel. And I think people are feeling more confident that air travel is a safe way to travel. So.
Yeah, definitely. I know when you and the our airline consultant Jack were on earlier in 2020, Jack gave some pretty good information about like the air filtration on the planes, and some studies that came out of pretty reputable medical research hospitals, and I think that's good data. As things do ramp back up, and that was a good tie-in with vaccinations, but is the airport and then the carriers, do you feel like you're able to scale back up? Like not knowing how to forecast or predict it, but can you get back to the flight operation standard relatively quickly, from an airport point of view, or are you guys ready for that?
From an airport point of view, I think we are ready. We're doing everything we can to be ready for when the public is ready to travel again. We're doing everything we can to keep the terminal clean, get information out, do everything we can to make people feel confident. But as far as our operations go, we basically went down to 0. So, and we're normally at 100. So we're, trying to find where there's not much difference from operating a building at 50% and 100% as far as ramping up. So we're kind of already going. It's just a faster pace when everybody comes back. But the things that we need to do are what we need to do, no matter how many passengers are flying through. And in the airlines, they're ready to go. I believe them. It's going to be, they're going to reduce the middle seat's not going to stay vacant forever, and that'll come back, and that adds capacity, that adds seats. So, I think we'll be ready to go. Airlines will be ready to go, and they'll respond appropriately to the demand of the passenger.
Oh, that sounds great. All right, well, let's get everybody to come back to the virtual coffee table, I guess, and we'll open it up to some questions. I took some notes, and I wanted to start off maybe with Megan and Michael, because Megan, when you talked about Vancouver, one of the things I saw on your slide was like train trips and stuff. And Michael from Visit Tri-Cities, we've got Amtrak service between Pasco and Vancouver, right? So is that kind of what you're thinking, Megan? Was that
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Karl. So how fun would it be to develop some sort of like pass or program or something where we start people here or there, it doesn't matter, and we kind of partner with the cities, and that train ride is so beautiful. It follows the Columbia River. It drops you right in the waterfront district of Vancouver, and then takes you right back home. Or if Vancouver's your home and you want to come to Pasco and explore the wine here and kind of see wine country, what a cool opportunity we have.
That's an outstanding idea. I could see using some digital technologies to drop some marketing right around the wine public there in Vancouver. Love that idea.
That's awesome. Well, I think, and Michael, maybe you can talk about this, but I think, has there been discussions about, doing like a cool wine tour, and maybe this is a future possibility, right? But like, say you got on a special wine tour train in Pasco and went, up through, the train tracks into, I don't know, Prosser or Yakima or something, like wherever the loop would be. Is that something that's been kicked around over the years and a potential?
So, and somebody may know better than I do, many, many years ago, and this might have been the early 90s, late 80s, there was a dinner train that ran up through here. So it was, one of those excursion trains. Love to see something like that come back. I can tell you, Visit Tri-Cities jointly owns Washington Wine Country, a website and an LLC with the Yakima Valley Tourism Bureau up there. And then also we include Walla Walla in that. So we talk about promoting the whole region. We were recently talking about what can we do through this region. And then with this return to the road trip idea through the Washington Tourism Alliance, we're building out itineraries and road trips. So we've been working with a wine focus on something very, very specific. So while it might not be happening on the rails just yet, I think the idea of making this loop and connecting some regions is in the works.
And for travel also, and Buck probably sees it, but Alaska has the the ship a case free. So any ticket you get on Alaska, you get to ship a whole case of wine with you for free, which is awesome. I've taken advantage of that several times. So if you're going to visit family or going on vacation or whatever, bring Washington wine with you. You know, why not? It's free.
Well, and I know this isn't Vancouver, but Portland's fairly close to Vancouver, and our Portland air service really hinges on what Alaska's doing in Portland. And my understanding is Alaska is going to be rehubbing Portland. I think it was going to be this summer, but it got pushed back to next summer. So I think there's a high probability we could see some Portland air service next summer as well. The return of Portland air service. Don't quote me on that. That's just me talking at this little coffee table, but I think it's a possibility once Alaska makes changes to the Portland airport.
Was that a Buck Taft said on March 5th at 9:47? I got a notepad. Karl, Buck and I were talking recently about that San Diego flight.
Yeah.
And the marketer that agency that Buck works with happens to live down there, mentioned there's a strong wine buying public. So at Visit, we're looking to bolster that flight and actually bring some folks out of California to come enjoy our Washington wines.
Oh, that's really cool. That, and I should have said this at the outset of our discussion, but I want to point out from an economic development standpoint that, all the things we're talking about related to life in the Tri-Cities and then visiting Tri-Cities is related to economic development, as well as what we do at TRIDEC and bringing companies in, helping companies grow, trying to do more for startups. The biggest trend right now in economic development is quality of life, and all the things that we're talking about, from being able to go and learn how to paddleboard to, all the things visitors wise that Visit Tri-Cities does that, anything that people would come to visit. And Michael, you've got a great catchphrase for this, makes it a better place to live. What is it? I'll give you your cue.
Yeah, well, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, the same things that make a community appealing to visitors, the same reasons why you want to live here. They are literally one and the same. It's quality of life.
Exactly. And that's, when we're competing for sites and stuff, all of these things that we're talking about are so important, and we do site visits, we'd love to bring them to the tasting room and have them experience in the glass studio and, just get a feel for what it's like to live here, because that's a huge part of appealing to people in business. And I think coming out of COVID, especially where, remote working is a real thing now, like people can choose where they live. And, Michael, if somebody comes over from the West Side for a soccer tournament or a softball tournament or something, and we all, do the great things that you guys are doing, and we can do even more and show them how great it is to live here. Like, why wouldn't they go like, hey, I could just move over to the Tri-Cities and have that 500 days of sunshine. Like,
so perfect. Well, and this might've been what you're referring to, that whole idea that it all begins with a visit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If you build a place that people want to visit, you build a place that people want to live. And if you build a place that people want to live, you build a place that people want to work. And if you build a place that people want to work, you build a place that business has to be. And if you build a place that business has to be, we just came full circle because you just built a place that people want to visit. So it feeds the economic development engine.
Oh, totally. Krista, I was going to ask, like, before, and you mentioned that, like, people that actually don't fall off of the paddle boards when they do the yoga on there. And I said, like, I'd need like an 8-foot paddle board, so I wouldn't fall off. But do you have a big paddle board, and is like group paddle boarding a thing?
Yeah. So we do have, we have a couple big boards. Our biggest one that's as big as you need for yoga is 8 foot by 5 foot. So it's 5 foot wide, 8 foot long. And then I've got or not 8 foot, sorry, it's longer than that. 8 foot's really short. It's an 8-person board. So it's 15 feet long, sorry, and 5 feet wide. And then I've got another board that's a 4-person board, but you're in a single file line. So it's 22 feet long. And it's not very wide, but it's very, very long. So yeah, and then we've got tandem paddle boards. So that's a 2-person. So 2 of you can, and honestly, you could fit 3 on there. I put my kid in the middle, and then 2 adults would be fine, or a cooler, whatever you want. Sure. So yeah, you can definitely do group stuff. Corporate team building is a big one. We have done a lot of local businesses and also businesses that are kind of surrounding areas that have come to do some corporate team building with us on those big boards, because obviously not so much since COVID, but definitely in normal times, that's a great team bonding activity. Everybody tries to push the boss off first. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, here's a question for Michael. Like, is that part of the Visit Tri-Cities spectrum of target audiences is like corporate retreat and team building that, you know, they could come and have a retreat, have a leadership exercise. They could do the team building paddleboarding. They could go to the winery. They, you know, obviously would fly through the airport. I mean, is that a niche market?
Great idea.
Yeah, we may need to leverage that. We will have executive committees come. We host boards, you know, come in and do things. And Krista knows this. We travel writers.
Oh yeah.
She's on the list. They love the paddleboarding. But same for Megan. You know, we've got to go and visit. And Karl, you were teeing it up. It's so interesting if you go to Barnard Griffin because you've got the glass studio there too. So it's really unique. And of course, there's some great food over that direction as well.
That's an awesome thing for company retreats because a lot of people say, oh, I'm not an artist. Kind of like what Krista was saying, oh, I'm going to fall off. It's like, no, try it. And you might like it. And so it's really fun to see a lot of obviously scientists and engineers will come in and get to do art. And even kids. My mom works with the Boys and Girls Club to get the kids in doing glass projects too. So that is a fun, super great opportunity for company and corporate retreats.
It's a really good thing. And Michael, because Buck and I both are on Michael's board, and Michael probably gets tired of me going like, hey, I got a good idea. Like I saw something on TV, but I'm thinking about paddleboarding and like, what about paddleboard races? You know, like if you had 4 people on a team and, you know, you're kind of like racing or something.
So we've done a paddleboard race before. I think it was 2018 or 2019. We did a paddleboard race and it wasn't the biggest turnout, but it was my very first race that I like put together and it was a lot of fun. But I definitely think that doing it more of an obstacle course race would be way more fun because a lot more people will be a little bit less intimidated by it. So that's definitely on my list of ideas to make happen is an obstacle course race where we have food trucks and lots of fun and different obstacles that you have to jump over or go under for paddleboarding. But our dragon board, which is that 22-foot long 4-person board, those are for racing. Those are specifically built for racing. So they have what's called Dragon Team Racing, and it's all around the world, not just in the US, it's everywhere, this dragon racing. So that's definitely something that we have to do. Maybe somebody gave me the idea to maybe have our local like PD or firefighters race each other, or you could even have like maybe winery people who are on winery teams race each other and kind of get the community together and have different industries come together and race those dragon boards. That would be fun.
Make them like floats and put people in costumes.
Yeah, yes. I like it.
Well, that's awesome. That idea actually incorporates every idea I've ever given to Michael because it's like
dragon boat. So Karl's literally throwing dragon boats at me. Yeah, well, and I think Karl, you hit it up. So I think I've got 2 thoughts. Either a visit Tri-Cities board retreat, so we get you and Buck on boards, and we'll do a little dragon boat race or dragon board racing, or maybe it's the economic development organizations competition. So we get TRIDEC and Visit and the chambers and ports and others involved in this. You
can call it the ultimate board meeting. Get it?
We do have one question I want to throw out there, and then we'll go to closing statements because, you know, as usual on these discussions, we're just about out of time. But the question is, to use your crystal ball for everybody, what do you think would be a realistic expectation about the strength of Tri-City tourism and each of your businesses when we reach 70 or 80% vaccination rates, say in 2022? So, you know, I think a little bit, everybody talked about like pent up demand for people to come back. And Buck, you talked about vaccination rates kind of affecting people booking and stuff, but what's everybody's guess on, you know, once we get to that 70 or 80% vaccination rate and the recovery or the comeback of tourism? Just, I don't know, let's start with Megan.
Well, I'm eternally hopeful, but we have to engage Washington travelers because I believe most of our tourism comes from people that are coming to work here and to see the labs. And I don't think that will be coming back anytime soon. I could be totally wrong. But it's all about engaging both our local traffic and people that will come here for tourism and not have a tourism be a byproduct of them coming to work.
Krista, what do you think? And I think your story was great, and it was a great one to hear that you didn't really see necessarily a downturn in 2020. You actually saw, you know, an increase. But do you see more people coming and paddleboarding? It sounds like you do, but what do you think?
So I think it's just going to flip. So right now we have a lot of locals coming to us more than normal because they're stuck here. And they're, you know, they didn't spend their money on concerts and vacations and all these things. They had money to spend more locally on any activities here. And we were one of the few things that you could do here. So I feel like that's where we really grew, but we lost a lot of tourism. So I did have a lot of people from like around the area, or, you know, Yakima. We had a lot more people from Yakima and Walla Walla coming down, because again, they're not going too far or whatnot. But we lost a lot of the, like, we have the boats that come in, and I don't know what you call them. I don't remember the names. There's a few different ones of the tour ships that come through, and we lost all of them. And those are big. All of those people love paddleboarding and kayaking, and we didn't get any of them. So I think it's going to flip. I think we're going to get a few less locals because they're going to finally have, you know, places to go and spend money elsewhere. But we're going to get some of that tourism back. So I think it's probably going to remain steady, at least for 2021. And I'm not really sure what to expect for 2022. Of course, as far as my own business and where I'm going, I definitely see it continue to grow every year. But as far as the industry as a whole, I think it's just going to flip, but not go down or up any drastically in any way.
Gotcha. Buck, what about you? Do you guys, do you run forecasts? And obviously I know Jack's sending stuff to you all the time, but what do you see coming up for the rest of 21 and 22?
Well, you know, we're not planning to get back to 19 numbers until 2023 or 24. And that's just the aviation industry kind of best guess. For us, leisure travel has been our kind of savior of what's actually moving now, but that's people leaving, not necessarily coming in. And I think until we can disassociate the fact that Washington's locked down, you know, I think I talk to a lot of people that are outside of Washington State and my family and friends, and they associate, you know, Washington, Oregon, and California as just being closed. And until we can get some type of message, or until we are open, I don't think we're going to have the visitors that we normally have. We may have people within our state come, but those out of state people that are coming, I think until the perception changes, it's going to be a slow recovery on getting that back in.
Well, with our 700 days of sunshine, there's a reason that you can be outside here.
Yeah,
Exactly. Michael, how about you? And I guess we're up to 700 days now. So let's see if we made it to 1,000.
I love it. Yeah. So our, you know, industry predictions for us, very similar to Buck. Full recovery to get back to 19 numbers is expected about 24. Although there was expectation that we'd have a pretty significant return by the end of this year, particularly if this vaccine rolled out the way it looks like it's going to. So the optimists are saying maybe 75%. We'll see if that recovery really holds. That's going to be a pretty solid upswing here this summer. For the Washington Tourism Alliance, it's the marketing arm for Washington State, and I serve on that board. We're focused on in-state, and typically we'd be focusing pulling domestic and international, and we recognize some of these barriers. So it's all about pushing the road trips. And for us, as I mentioned earlier, that drive markets for us, Puget Sound in particular, is huge. So already a sweet spot for us. So we're going to be concentrating on the really heavy to drive leisure.
Great. All right. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. Let's go around and just do a closing remarks that anybody wants to leave us with. I really appreciate everybody's time today. I think this was a great conversation. I'm excited to go do some paddleboarding and check out the tasting room and the glass studio. And it's not going to be too much longer before I'll be flying back out of Tri-Cities Airport. So let's just go down our presentation list and start with Michael on a closing remark.
Sure. So, well, as you heard, the Tri-Cities, an amazing place to live, work, play, and of course, visit. So what I would encourage anybody who's watching, invite your family in. We've got some awesome amenities. You can go paddleboarding with Krista. You can fly them in via Buck, and they can go have some wine with Megan. But those visiting friends and relatives, those families, it provides huge economic impact. Whether they're sleeping on your couch or they're enjoying one of our fabulous hotels, it makes a big, big difference supporting local jobs in our local economy. So get out there and enjoy the Tri.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. And I do have to let you know, we are working on the smoking jacket. Don't give up hope. It's, it's in the works. Appreciate you being on. Krista, thanks for joining us this morning. I learned a lot about paddleboarding. Do you have some closing remarks for us, or maybe direct people to your website, or the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So yeah, you can go to northwestpaddleboarding.com. We're still by delivery until April, which is when we'll open our storefront, and then we will open for rentals again in May when the water is a little bit warmer. And then, yeah, just continue to get outside. I think that enjoying, there has been a huge boost in hanging out with your kids and your grandkids and getting outside and enjoying all of the Tri-Cities. So all the hiking spots, people are biking more. My kid learned to bike. Actually, both of them have learned to ride their bikes this last year. So definitely getting outside, whether it's on the water or on land. Yeah, we just need more of that. And I think 2020 taught us that. And I think we shouldn't let that go.
That's awesome. Thanks for being on this morning. Megan, would you like to make some closing remarks? And thanks for being with us this morning. I learned a lot, and we'll have to have you back because I'd like to learn more about wine science. And
Oh, I'll ramble about wine science and the Missoula floods and all things wine if you let me. But just closing remarks, get out and explore this area. It's beautiful. Here at Barnard Griffin, we have the gift of space. So we have an outdoor patio with some fireplaces, a huge sliding door that allows us to have even more seating under our roof because we can get the ventilation, a gazebo, and then a beautiful grass area that you can drink wine under the sun. So if you're outdoorsy and want to do some recreation, go to Krista. And if you're outdoorsy and that you like to drink wine outside, come to me.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Buck, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I just want to say, we're doing everything that we can here at the airport to create as safe of an environment as we can. Cleaning standards, we're working on becoming a accredited facility that's able, that has good cleaning processes and everything. So we're doing everything we can for the traveling public. And when everyone's ready to fly, we just want them to know that we'll be here and we're doing all we can to ramp our service back up and do what we can to support the Tri-Cities and the local businesses. So
that's awesome. Thanks for joining us today, Buck. To all our panelists, thanks for your time this morning. And for everybody in the webinar, we'll be back on Tuesday at 9, we'll have the ports on, and then Tuesday afternoon at 1, we'll have our higher education panel. So thanks everybody for joining us this week, and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right, bye.